If you're the kind of person who often finds themselves setting up their new journal in a rush just before the new month starts, or maybe sometimes you get to the new month and you're still not set up, then this video is for you. New journal setup season is approaching, which begs the question, is it too early to set up your journal now? The answer to that one, like every big question, is it depends. So let's have a look. One of the biggest points in favor of starting early is excitement. If you're excited to start your new journal setup now, then why deny yourself that joy? I want your planning and journaling to be a joyful experience, and the fresh slate feeling that comes with a new journal setup is one that I always look forward to, and you might be the same. This can also come with the negative side of wanting it to be perfect, but more on that in a bit. But a more pressing negative that comes with doing a new journal setup too early is old journal abandonment. Let me know if you can relate, but pretty much without fail, every single month, as soon as I've set up my journal for the next month, my enthusiasm for using my current monthly pages tanks. This can be the same for a new journal setup, so we plan out and set up the new journal. Meanwhile, our current, not yet finished journal kind of just gets left by the wayside. Thankfully, there is a way to combat this, and that's by leaning into our pre-journal setup tasks. A new journal setup often doesn't start with just putting pen to paper, so there might be some groundwork that needs to be done before your proper setup begins. Often we don't necessarily factor in how long those pre-setup tasks will take, so you might want to start sooner than you'd originally planned. These pre-setup tasks can include things like idea generation or collecting for the things that you want to include in your setup, deciding on any decorative or aesthetic elements you want, and also sourcing the materials that you're going to want to use for those. When it comes to the supplies in particular, starting sooner rather than later can be a good bet. Especially around busy seasons, when shipping times can get quite long, ordering those supplies earlier could be wise. Getting your supplies can also include your notebook, so there might be some restrictions in when you can start, depending on when your planner of choice is to be released. This can also be one of those balancing acts between wanting to wait for the perfect planner to get released, or doing your research around which notebook will be best for you, versus actually getting the notebook in your hands ready to set up. I all too often fall victim to the ever-increasing research stage, so it's important to not let that suck up all of our available time for actually setting up the journal. A really important pre-setup task for me is getting clear on which journals I'll actually be using. I want to think through how my planning system is going to look for the different types of information I want to record, or my different life areas. What kind of things will I be recording digitally versus in my planners? I like to keep different things in different journals, so it can be a bit of a process to figure out my lineup each year, but given this, I like to start early, and we do have a separate video linked in the description box showing how I selected my ones for the year ahead. With that in mind, it is also important to note that I often start my new journal setup process earlier than most people would, and this is because I like to record my setups, so that people can use them for ideas and whatever else. Just because I start my New Year journal setup in November does not mean that you have to. Time is one of the biggest factors to consider for when you start your new journal setup. If you're like me, then often we'll start a project thinking it's going to take a certain amount of time, but in reality it ends up taking much longer. But our time consideration here isn't just about how much time the setup will take you, it's also how much time you have available. Sure, there may be 2 months until you're actually going to start using your new journal, but you don't necessarily have 2 months to work on it. Between now and then, what other things are happening which decrease your available setup time? An action you can take here is sitting down with a calendar and looking to see when you will and won't be free to work on your journal. If you know you're going to need 3 dedicated sessions to work on it, when can you actually slot those in before your new journal is going to be used? One of the biggest arguments for not starting too early is, what if I find something better? This could be in relation to the planner you're going to use, or the layouts you want to include, or really any aspect of the process. Especially when setting up our journals for the new year, there can be a lot of pressure to get it right or make it perfect. But honestly, the best planning systems are the ones that align with your purpose and that you actually use. An action that I like to take here is giving myself a set cutoff point for when I'll have my choices made by. This helps me combat any potential analysis paralysis, or letting the research stage steal all of my setup time. Predicting the future certainly isn't one of my skills, so it can be hard to know exactly what we'll need from our planners in advance. We don't want to set up our journals only to realize once we start them, we've missed something important. That being said though, there is no harm in starting to collect ideas and inspiration. Is it too early to start? I mean, I don't think so. Technically, I start working on my new journal setup as soon as I start using my previous journal. So with each new journal setup I do, I like to include a page to jot down ideas for the one that follows. This way I have a dedicated space to record any of those ideas or inspiration pieces when they strike, and when it comes to setting up the new journal, past me has already done some of the groundwork. As an action here, you can totally set one of these up in your journal, either as a space to just list the ideas out, or possibly draw out some little thumbnails of what the layouts could look like. Just make sure to include enough detail so that when future you comes back to it, you know what you were talking about. One of my favorite pre-setup steps that I like to start earlier than most people is planning out what I want my journal to include. I have a fairly set process on how I like to tackle that, so if you want to know how I plan my new journal setups to make them the best iteration yet, then the video we have on screen here is worth checking out. Click or tap on that one and I'll see you over there.